Greetings, everyone. My name is Emily Louie, and on behalf of Campbell & Company, I would like to welcome you to Fundraising Communications 2, Donor Messages That Resonate. This is the second webinar in our 5-part Fundraising Communications webinar series. Thanks for joining us today. Before we begin today's presentation, I'd like to quickly go through some logistics for those of you who may be new to our webinars. First, close any programs other than GoToWebinar that are running on your computer. Next, we recommend calling in with a telephone instead of using your computer speakers. And if you experience any visual issues, please send a chat to Campbell & Company or contact GoToWebinar at the number on your screen. Today's webinar is being recorded and will last 60 minutes. You'll also earn 1 continuing education credit that is good with your participation with CFRE International. Within the next 24 hours, you'll receive an email from GoToWebinar that includes information on how to download your certificate. In that same follow-up email, you'll also receive a link to download today's slides, along with a link to the recording. We do welcome questions throughout the webinar, so please use the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel that should be on the right side of your computer screen. We'll also hold time at the end of the webinar for a Q&A. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our presenter, Andy Brommel, Director of Communications Consulting.
Thanks, Emily. All right, and thanks everyone for joining us today. These webinars are really a highlight of our year, every year, and today's session is secretly my favorite of the webinars that we do. So it's just glad to have the chance to share it with you. These webinars really reflect the work of our communications team at Campbell & Company, which focuses on case development, fundraising communications, campaign branding, this whole related set of communications areas that orbit around fundraising. So these are a chance to reflect on how we're actually working with clients to share some of those insights and experiences with everyone across the sector. So we really appreciate that you've joined us and hope you find some value in this and hope you might check out the rest of the series. As Emily mentioned, this is part of a series we do every year that begins from the recognition that fundraising is a communications discipline. It's a process of finding a receptive audience and communicating a message to them that inspires them to take an action. We're not selling them, objects or goods and services. We're communicating an idea to them, and that's what they get in exchange for their gift. So that means that every fundraiser is a communicator, whether you think of yourselves that way or not. You're part of a communications infrastructure. And yet most of us in the field don't really have enough time or support or resources to help you in your communications roles. There's not enough chances to really step back and think about, amid all your other responsibilities day to day, to step back and think about your case, how you communicate it, to practice that, to hone your message. So that's why we've created these webinars, and we hope you find them useful. Here's a look at the series this year. We're doing 5 sessions. The first one was back in October. They all kind of relate to each other and build on each other, but it's really fine if you drop in and out or if you've missed the first one. They are all, they all are or will be up on our YouTube channel, so you can find them there and go back and check out that first one if you missed it. The first one is really all about defining your case for support, what goes into a case for support. Today's session is about how you translate that case into really clear core messages. Next session coming up in March is all about volunteers and how you help your volunteers get comfortable expressing your case. A couple of my colleagues are going to lead that one. It's going to be great. And then we have a couple other sessions coming focusing on cultivation materials for major gift cultivation and campaign communications. So that's the series this year. Looking forward to it. The point of all of this is really just to help you in your role to get more effective, more comfortable, more confident in expressing your organization's philanthropic message. New this year, we've also added started doing a bunch more writing in addition to all the webinars. This was back in April as the pandemic was bumming us all out, we kind of decided let's write a new article every week for the rest of the year. So here we are in December. We've written, several dozen articles that cover a lot of topics around case development, messaging, collaboration, and the work process of communications. These feature voices from across our communications team, so you're not just going to get sick of my my voice alone. Please do check this out. I would love if everyone who attends today would go check this out and subscribe. We're going to probably change the format and frequency of the series as we go into next year, but we will be continuing to share really thoughtfully developed resources there. And as Emily mentioned, please do ask questions. I'm gonna plow through like 70 slides in 50 minutes here is the goal, and we'll try to leave 10 or 15 minutes for questions at the end. So I mentioned this. Let's just jump right in. This session builds on the previous webinar. But if you missed that one, that's fine. Let's just do a quick recap that will help provide some grounding for today's session. 3 main ideas about case for support that I want you to remember as a foundation for thinking about messaging. First, you want to think about your case not as a case statement or some particular kind of document, but think about it as a set of messages that you communicate to prepare prospects for a solicitation. That's key. That's the first idea. Stop thinking about it as a document. Think about it as a set of messages. Second, we've introduced the 6 elements of your case for support, basically the 6 ingredients that go into a complete case for support. You don't necessarily need to use all 6 of these in every little annual fund letter you do or something, but for a complete case that can support a major gift solicitation, you need to be covering these 6 elements. Context, kind of what's the broader story around our organization. Impetus, why now? What's the urgency? What's the spark? Vision and plan, where are we going and how are we going to get there? What will be different? What are we going to do with your gift? And then the credential is sort of the why us, why should you trust us? What makes us worthy of doing this work? And then the appeal is the ask, can't forget that. So we have this 6 element structure. You'll see some echoes of this in the content today. It basically boils down to kind of the why of your case, the what you're actually going to do, and then like who is doing the work, us, the organization, and you, the donor, kind of working together. So this structure, and we have articles about this on our site if you'd like to dig into this a little bit more. And finally, once you have a core of strong messages as the foundation for your case, then everything after that is a lot easier. Once the hard work is getting the messages distilled, but then it's easy to communicate that across all these different channels. So consistent messages will flow into annual appeals, cultivation materials, leadership coaching and training, your website, project specific fundraising. All that stuff becomes so much easier once you have this like bedrock of core case messages that you're starting from. So that's it for a quick recap of the previous session. What this really shows you is just how central the idea of messaging and the importance of strong messages is when you're thinking about case development in a contemporary, like a modern communications environment. So let's jump in. What is a message anyway? This is a word that we see a lot. It gets used in a lot of different ways. You might think about, what was the message of that movie we just watched, or will this political candidate's message resonate with such and such voters? It gets used in a lot of different ways. I want to talk about it in a very specific way as a simple expression of an idea that is designed to move an audience. So not the broader sense of like, what is the moral of the story or the overall meaning of a text. We're not thinking at that broad level. We're thinking about it as like a small unit of communication, a little bite-sized piece of language that is driven by a really clear central idea and that has a purpose with respect to an audience. It knows who its audience is, and it wants them to do something, whether to inspire them to action, to engage them, to learn more, to convince or persuade them of something, to evolve their understanding of some question or issue. So it's again, a really simple expression of an idea that is designed to reach an audience and move them somewhere. So let's just take look at some really simple examples, get out of kind of conceptual territory here. Alzheimer's disease is the defining public health challenge of our time. This is a pre-2020 example, so you'll note that. No child should miss out on a great education for financial reasons, or it's our turn to invest in the future of our school. What all these examples have in common, again, they're very simple. They each express like exactly one idea, not two, certainly not three. And they're like these little building blocks of communication that you can imagine what you would do with them to expand them, tell stories off of them, bring proof points and embellishments around them. But these are like the core little nucleus of communications. So let's go a little bit deeper now into what they do and how they work. Most important idea here is just think about messages structure how we think about things. They're not necessarily trying to just give you information about an issue. They're trying to shape how you view an issue. They're trying to like influence your worldview and the lens and your interpretation of information more than just like deliver information. Let's look at some easy examples here come from politics. Left and right. No one in this country should work full time and still live in poverty. That's again, like that's not necessary. It's not like trying to deliver information. It's trying to structure how you think about the world. Or on the right, that government is best, which governs least. There's an idea or an ideal that's expressed there. It's not necessarily just trying to explain something or give you information. It's trying to capture a worldview and invite you into that in a sort of persuasive way. And these, as you can start to feel, like they operate on the level of values and identity and worldview. It's this, when you encounter messaging in this like distilled form, you feel it pulling at your sense of who you are, what kind of person you are, what kind of world you live in, what kind of world you want to live in. Like it should not feel like it's all just above the neck. It should feel like it's pulling at or trying to speak to who you are and your sense of yourself, your community, your family, your world, your structure of meaning in your life. And we see this not just in politics. Let's go into the land of marketing. So I don't know, I think of this as probably the most effective marketing message ever. A diamond is forever. The message is basically everything you want in terms of permanence, certainty, and commitment, and stability, and family in your life. That's everything that you feel in your identity and your desires and your worldview that's wrapped around this sense of commitment to another person. It's saying that equals this one specific type of rock that we found. So like it's and it's like goofy when you kind of like pull it apart like that, and like this like huge rich structure of human meaning, like we're gonna attach that to like this one kind of expensive rock that we found. But that's how we all think. It's how we all work. It's this message has completely structured how all of us think. To the point that if you reject this, like if you you want to propose with like a different type of stone or no ring or whatever, like then that feels like a really deliberate choice. So that's how completely they've just like structured our brains with this. And again, it's on the level of who you are, what kind, the things that matter to you as a person. This is not a rational argument about like marriages with this kind of ring will be 10% more likely to succeed. Like, it's not on that level. It's on the level of who you are and what you care about. So that's how you see how these work. Meanwhile, over here in the nonprofit sector, you know, I don't want to dunk on us too much. We struggle with this. Most organizations in the nonprofit sector really struggle to articulate clear, simple messages. There are a lot of reasons for this. We are all a little allergic to things that feel salesy and kind of BS-y and promotional. We think what we're doing is like more important and like more complicated than that. And we're all very earnest. We're not trying to like put one over on folks with any kind of dumb taglines. The sector at this point in time is very educated, it's very professionalized. You know, everybody's got a master's degree. And we want badly to be taken seriously. You know, like we feel we're sick of being like thought of as this, you know, quaint little sector that's not like as big and serious as business or government. So we try to like puff up our own seriousness by talking in like really complicated, sophisticated ways. Also, most of our organizations are like understaffed and resourced around marketing. So we don't actually have a lot of the expertise in-house to bring to this kind of work. So for all these reasons, you know, we tend to underinvest or underattend to messaging, and we miss these opportunities to really shape how people understand our missions and organizations by using the power of messaging. Just a few more examples. I want to show you like what does it mean to build messages that speak to values and identity? How is that different from just kind of making your logical case? So let's look at, we're going to do a lot of, in this webinar, we do a lot of before and afters. It's kind of like a makeover show or like a cooking show or something where we're like showing what the ingredients are and then what we can turn it into. So let's say you're starting with an education program, an educational opportunity program that's in a city. So one message that you might have would be around kind of your impact, your ROI. So you might be saying, every dollar we invest in this education program generates $10 of social benefit and economic impact. That's great. That's really like, that's a really good point to make. I would say it's maybe not quite a message though. It's more of a proof point. It's like something that could sit underneath a message and support a message, but it's not saying who is the audience and where do we want to move them. So let's think about values and identity. Who is the audience? How do we meet them where they are? Where do we want them to go? So then you actually realize there's actually multiple options for how you could turn this into more of a distinct message. So let's say we have an audience that has more of a communitarian kind of moral mindset. The message might be that no child should miss out on a great education for financial reasons. Or you might be speaking to more of a business audience, more of an investment mindset, saying like, this is the smartest investment we can make in our future today. You could imagine like a religious version that starts with, you know, this is what we're called to do based on our faith and our values. So when you look at these blue boxes, you can like imagine the person who would view that as a rallying cry. In the top box, it's someone who's like has like more of a moral framework. The bottom blue box, that's for like maybe your donor who what they like to think of themselves as like the smart money or like the smart investor with like the really clever solutions to social problems that maybe others haven't thought of. You know, it's about who is your donor, what are their values, what identity are you trying to support in them. And again, for either of these blue box messages, you might then use the proof point that's in the red box, perfectly good proof point, but the message is more distilled on the right. Effective messages make things simple. So this is what you see when you look at the long version of the that we had on the poster board a couple slides ago. The challenge here is making complicated things simple. When you can do that, people think you are a magician. So good place to start is to actually ask people, because it's actually not that hard to get to like the simple, deeper core of why people care about organizations. You can just ask them. So we like to do this exercise, and you can do this with, with your board, your staff, whoever. Just ask them from their own, not putting their like organization hat on. Just think about another organization that you support. Why do you give money to them? And we'll do this at the beginning of some like case meetings with board or staff. And what you find, you give them 2 or 3 minutes to think, and then you go around and hear what people say. What you find is that even when you're talking to really fancy nonprofit professionals or really, high-powered board members, people with really big brains, like you ask them this question, and the reasons that people give are really simple. They say things like, I really feel like reproductive rights are under attack right now, and I want to protect those rights for people in my community. Or, as I've gotten more involved, I've learned that hunger is a way worse problem in our community than most people realize. And this food bank is great because they not only feed people, but they help people find a path out of poverty. Or, I love this urban farming program because it both grows healthy food for communities that need it, and it also creates jobs for people. So it's this really smart way to take on 2 social problems at once with this one really smart organization. So, you ask people why they support, and they give simple reasons. And there won't be more than 3 or 4 points in essentially the case that they make to you for an organization they support. So if people can usually only remember 3 or 4 or 5 things about an organization that they care about, if you're that organization, what are you doing to create those 3 or 4 or 5 reasons or ideas or messages in their mind, and to put those out there consistently? And here's where you really see the difference in how like we think about this and talk about this, and how donors think about it. So imagine it's easy to dunk on higher ed because they struggle with this a lot. It's just too many smart people in one place, so the language gets really complicated. The university wants to say, as a global leader in innovative education, we're preparing future leaders with the critical blah 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 blah. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You then ask someone who is volunteering their actual time from their one and only human life to serve on the board, to give money, to like go out and ask why, someone who's really put, invested in the cause. You ask them why they give, and they'll just say, this cause changed my life, and I want other young people to have the same chance that I had. That's why I'm involved. That's why I give. That's why I serve on this board. So it's not exactly that you would then turn around and write exactly that on your brochure. It's that you want messaging that speaks to that operates on that level, that feels human, that feels like a person would say it. Crucially, that feels maybe like like one of your donors might say it to another person in their life, and your case could actually transmit word of mouth. That's the dream, right? So one more thing messaging does, again, it makes things simple. Alzheimer's disease is the defining public health challenge of our time. It's our turn to invest in the future of our school. There's longer stories around each of these, but it's boiled down to a really simple statement that you could imagine someone remembering, you can imagine an actual person saying, you can imagine them transmitting word of mouth. So that's the challenge, getting to really strong, well-defined messages, getting your case, which is this whole set of questions and ideas and the 6 elements and all this stuff, getting that down to these building blocks of really clear, strong messages. So that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about getting your case to a point where everything important that you need to convey about it distills down to simple messages that really work. Oh, and if you can do this, it's probably the cheapest way to make all of your fundraising communications more effective, because it takes time, it takes thought. You can hire an expert partner to help you with it, or you can do it yourself. It mostly just takes attention and focus and like a lot of just a lot of pushing on the messages until they're strong. But if you can do that, then all your fundraising communications become more effective. Your volunteers become much more willing to make their calls. They get more comfortable. Your leadership gets more comfortable about communicating your case. They're willing to go meet with donors. Everything you need to write becomes easier to write because you know what you're trying to say and you have like simple language to start from. And you know, it doesn't cost more to print a brochure with good messaging versus a brochure with weak or non-existent messaging. So this is something you can do. If you're planning your work for next year going into 2021, maybe you put this on your list. Take some time to work on your messaging. Before we go too much further, I want to share a couple clarifying points. There's just some questions that come up a lot when we talk about messaging. The first is just what is the difference between messaging and substance? So you might look at this and feel like what we're trying to do is sort of dumb things down or like reduce the richness of your mission to these like some like dumb little taglines or something. That would be bad. And indeed, like sometimes that does happen. Like if you, I don't mean to dunk on anyone, but like when you hire like a general purpose marketing or creative agency that doesn't specialize in case development or nonprofit work, like just like the good local agency in town, if you hire them, like someone who's used to doing like retail branding or whatever, if you hire them to do your campaign materials, like sometimes you will get that where like all the substance drops out and you just get taglines. But that's really not what we're talking about here. When you think about a message like, you know, Alzheimer's disease is the defining public health challenge, like that's substantive. You can imagine the whole TED Talk or like, you know, interview on NPR or, you know, white paper that would be like just below the surface of that, right? There's all the factoids, there's all the stories and emotional richness that would flow out of that, all the people and human stories that surround that issue. So you have this really simple core message, but it does not replace substance. It brings structure to substance and it makes information intelligible and memorable. You need some easy way of talking about this really complicated issue like Alzheimer's disease, which is, you know, has so many facets to it: societal, family, medical, scientific, you know, public health, Medicare and Medicaid. Like there's too much to say, but you get this core message that begins to create a structure to talk about it. So again, going back to our original kind of nonprofit case, you might start with all this stuff that's over on the left. And if you keep pushing on that hard enough for long enough, you'll distill it down to these like 5 core messages. And each of those 5 core messages might have 2 or 3 supporting points. So you're creating structure, you're creating hierarchy, you're bringing structure to information with the key like units of measure being these big core messages. The other question that comes up a lot is what's the difference between our message and our mission? So this is important. There's a relationship here, but it's not like a one-to-one relationship. So your mission, primarily speaking to an internal audience, it's about who we, you know, this is very important for orienting staff and orienting your efforts internally with your staff and board. It defines your organizational purpose as precisely as possible. And it needs to be useful to your internal stakeholders in guiding organizational decisions. So it's kind of like your internal compass. Your message is really thinking mostly about external audiences, although your staff are frankly an important audience for your messaging. Certainly your board is. And this is an external expression of your organizational purpose and identity that's intended for external stakeholders. And it needs to meet external stakeholders where they are with whatever level of understanding they have and bring them in. So these two, they're different. They do need to be compatible. They need to be pointing in the same direction, but they don't need to be identical. They probably shouldn't be. They probably shouldn't be using exactly the same vocabulary because they have sort of different functions. All right, so let's jump into how do we make messages? What's the actual like writing and thinking craft and discipline of messaging. So this is just going to be like a grab bag of a bunch of different tips and a bunch of examples. These are little tools you can pull out, or little tactics you can try to keep honing and refining ideas. So think of these as just like, these are the moves, these are the plays you might call to translate ideas into messages. So the first one, be direct. So let's do a before and after. Before, alongside our recent investments in capital and programs, we must also invest in our school endowment to ensure our strongest future. Okay, so that's what you're trying to communicate. That's an important idea in your case. You can see what this is expressing. It's basically saying, we've already done our last campaign was all about capital and program, but now we also have to think about our endowment in order for us to have the most complete and the best approach to our school's future. So there's information, there's substance here, but I don't think this is not written in a way that someone would say it to their neighbor at the drop-off line at school. It's not direct enough. If you keep pushing on it, you might get to something like, the endowment is the most important investment we can make in our school's future right now. That's, again, this is what it's trying to say. It just wasn't being direct enough about it. What we're really trying to say is that right now, the most important thing for us is endowment. There's a whole story off of that. There's reasons why that is. There's direction, there's more information about what we want to do with the endowment, but that core idea, right now, endowment is most important. These tend to be very simple and just once you get to them, you have that aha moment. So look for the ahas. Let's say you are an organization that supports, you're like a community foundation or United Way, or one of these types of umbrella funder organizations that channels money to different organizations in the community. So the story you're trying to say is that for nearly a century, the big umbrella funder has supported thousands of nonprofit organizations across our city. And now, as we're working to take on the most challenging issues in our community, we're preparing to launch a new strategy that brings partner organizations together to tackle problems at the neighborhood level. So that's perfectly clear. But it's just a lot. It's kind of a lot to remember. So keep pushing on it. What's the aha that's buried in there? And actually, it could be a couple different things. One option, the core message might be that it's really about the connections. We're realizing that all the problems are interconnected: hunger, housing, education, all these things. So we need interconnected solutions. If the problems are interconnected, we need interconnected solutions. Maybe that's the core idea. Or maybe the core message is more about the neighborhood piece. Notice the neighborhood level is an important piece of information in that red box. So maybe the core message is really about that. Our new citywide strategy is based on neighborhoods because neighborhoods are big enough to truly matter, yet small enough for us to truly change. Again, either one of those might be the aha moment. Maybe both of those are, maybe there's actually two key messages that are both interwoven into this red box, and what was making it kind of hard to process is the fact that it had two core ideas instead of one. So again, look for those ahas, look for the moments when you or someone, you can even ask people when was it that it clicked for you, what our organization does and why it matters? Ask people what their aha moments were, and there's usually a messaging seed somewhere in the middle of that. Another good tactic is to just look for what's the strongest claim that you can back up. So here's an example. We were working, this was probably 10 years ago now, back in the heady days of ACA healthcare reform. So the idea was, healthcare reform is bringing a new focus on prevention, community health, and affordability. And for decades, we've been a leader in these critical areas. This was actually a safety net hospital. And what they wanted to say was, don't just think of us as the kind of nice charity safety net hospital that's there for people who don't have resources, but maybe isn't that sophisticated. What they were trying to say is actually what we've been doing, focusing on community care, prevention, affordability, what we have been doing for decades, people are now coming around to recognizing that this is the most important thing in healthcare. Like, so again, the core message after we pushed on it for for a bit was American healthcare is now going where we've always been or already been. So again, look for the strongest like keep pushing things until you get to like the boldest version that you can support. Sometimes that's the right tactic to get to your core message. This one's important. Don't stop until it's simple. Just you have to keep pushing. You cannot settle for fuzzy, diluted, complicated messaging. The job is not done, and it's it's hard. Like it's silly how much time you can spend trying to get to like five simple sentences. It's like why does that take 3 months? But this is the work. So okay, let's say this is what you're trying to say. Okay, this is from a campaign for a school, and the new campaign, what they were saying was, we've always been recognized for our outstanding academic programs, but we know that our extracurricular and co-curricular programs can be just as important in shaping our children's lives. So basically they're saying like, this campaign isn't about academics, but we want you to feel like it's just as important. So that's the kind of rough expression of the idea. As this campaign was going to raise money for a performing arts center, for athletics facilities, for all this stuff that's really important in kids' journeys, but just is not like core classroom academics. Core message we landed on, this campaign's about all the learning that happens outside the classroom. Think back to your own high school experience. What were the things that changed your life? It just as likely it was the team you played on, your experience doing public speaking, being in the band, being in the play. So much life-changing stuff happens outside the classroom. This campaign's all about that. So again, you just keep pushing until it's simple words that are very simple language and one really distilled idea. Good test to apply along the way. Would a human say it to another human in an actual real-life conversational context? So paradigmatic example here. Comes from Hunger Relief Food Bank world. No child should grow up in a food insecure household. I like to dunk on the jargon of food insecurity because it is, of course, like if you are writing your master's thesis in social science about the like sophisticated and interrelated challenges that contribute to food insecurity in a community, like that's the language you're going to use. If you're an expert writing and speaking to other experts within a professional domain, then food insecurity is the right vocabulary. If you're trying to speak to any sort of normal person who's not, an expert in the field, then you need to think about using more human language. No child should go to school hungry. No parent should worry about where their child's next meal will come from. Put it in human terms that you could imagine your donor saying to their friend, thus turning that friend into your new donor. Once you start to do this, you start to find that you develop a kind of allergy or a hatred for adjectives, and you want to keep coming back to nouns and verbs. So again, going in the educational space, the world of education is like bad adjective city. You see so many just lists of these kinds of adjectives. We offer a child-centered, transformational, holistic education, global, innovative, problem-based, inquiry-driven. Like we can all like this is like a cliche. We know this joke about like all this jargon. We joke about it to each other. The way to test this is just look at the sentence and cross out all the adjectives, or in this case, like noun phrases functioning as adjectives. So cross out child-centered, cross out transformational, cross out holistic. We offer education. That's what this sentence is saying. Hey, we offer an education. And on that education, we're like pouring some adjectives to try to make it exciting. The basic sentence is like a rice cake, and you're just like trying to pour adjective syrup on it. So how would you turn this into an action statement where like there's a person, the person is doing something, there's a, you know, there's somebody taking action. We give every child every chance to discover who they can become. That's what we're doing. This is about young people discovering who they are, who they can be. You know, we do that in child-centered, transformational, holistic, whatever ways, but like the core action is a young person discovering who they are. So look for noun and verb based sentences, subject and predicate. All this stuff takes you right back to all that stuff we learned in elementary school. Turns out it was useful. Okay, another tip, don't build one of these. What is this? This is a terrible bed combined with a terrible couch. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be like, ignore this slide if your great grandma invented the futon, or if like your lead donor is a futon magnate or something. A futon is something that does two things poorly instead of doing one thing well. You want your messages to express one idea very well, not try to split the difference between two or three different things. If you have two essential things that you need to express, break them up into two separate messages. Have a couch over here and a bed over here. So let's look at an example of this. This comes in a lot when we are talking about sort of complicated things. So annual fund, kind of hard to talk about because it does all these different things. This is from a school. The annual fund provides funding that supports a wide range of initiatives, including financial aid, faculty professional development, new program innovation, technology, and equipment. Whenever you find yourself making a list, that's a good signal that you're not creating a message. So what is the message here? When you look at this, you realize, oh, I actually don't know what the message is here. It actually could be one or two or three different things. Maybe the message is that your annual fund gift benefits every student every day. Maybe the message is your annual fund gift supports all the things that we love most about our school. The reason you chose this school, the annual fund invests in all those things. Maybe your annual fund gift is this the most important gift you can make to benefit our students today? This might be your message. Like if you have your annual fund going during a campaign and you have your like other event fundraisers and your planned giving program, like there's like so many ways you're asking people. Maybe your core message is just, hey, of all these things we're going to ask you for this year, your annual fund gift is the most important gift you make every year. Like that's an important message. So you need to say it and not like bury it in this sort of logical argument or listing of all the benefits. Now, all this stuff that's in the red box, you might still say that. That might be the thing you say directly after the blue statement. You might say, you know, this benefits every student every day. Every kid going through the hallway of these schools, every day they're running into faculty who are there with support from annual fund. They're running into classmates who are there with the benefit of financial aid. They're using technology that was supported through the annual fund. Like you can use all that information, but you got to wrap it around and have it support a core message that's a little bit clearer. One of the challenges here is to kind of get out of your own head. And remember that, you know, if you're on staff or even if you're on the board, you have a very particular view of the organization. You are in the pilot seat. You're looking at all this like you know, this is your view, and your audience is not up there with you. They are thinking about where the airplane goes. It lets them go visit their family who they love. Is it safe? Is it affordable? Is it a good experience? Are the people wearing masks? No, they're not. Do not get on this airplane. So like, you know, just you have to continually remember that you cannot see what your audience sees, and you cannot trust your own instincts when it comes to messaging. You have to really try to get out of your own head and think about these things from the audience view. Another easy tip here, just try listening. Again, going back to those questions, why do you support this organization? Listen to how your donors and board members talk about your organization, your mission, your cause, your community. Talk about themselves. Why are they here? Look for where the energy is. Ask questions that get them talking about why they're here. Notice where they start to cry. When you have good conversations about a case, like somebody cries. Where do you feel that energy, that connection? What are they telling you about themselves? That's where the messaging is. You'll bring in other information around it as you need to, based on how, frankly, how complicated of a solicitation it is, or how big of a solicitation it is. But the core message is going to come from those more simple human places. You start to become sensitive when you start looking at this to like, what is like push messaging and what is pull messaging? Push is like, here I want to tell you all these things about us. So for 25 years, we've led the climate conversation in our state, built strong partnerships with organizations and legislators, and created a model for other states. This is us puffing ourselves up about, this is why we're great, and we want you to know it, we want you to recognize it. We're confident that when you see how great we are, you're just gonna want to give us money. This is us pushing information, and this is us like pushing our sense of identity at you. What would it look like to have a message that kind of conveys the same stuff, but starts with the donor's identity and tries to pull them in based on that identity? If you care about our climate, this is the smartest way to make a difference today. So here the identity that's in play is smart donor. You see this a lot in environmental organizations. You have the like really politicized and you have a politicized set of donors. You have a smart, technocratic, wonky set of donors and people who just like care about use the word solutions a lot. You have like capital N nature, people who have like a spiritual communion with the land and just like, this is about, you know, you have like people who come to it more from that angle. So many different types of donor identities, and these may be all people for the same organization, which makes it complicated. But knowing who your donor is, what identity that, you know, you can kind of speak to in them is a good place to start. And you start to think about, is this message like pulling someone in or just like pushing our favorite talking points at them? So those are our whirlwind tips for making messages. I want to show you an example of how to use messages. This comes from some work that it's just been a total joy for our team, an honor for our team to work over the last year with the Greater Milwaukee Foundation. I'm going to share some examples here that don't actually come from a case for support. It actually comes from a whole new strategic plan and strategic direction that GMF is rolling out. They are the community foundation, the largest community foundation in Milwaukee. They've been there for over 100 years. And they have a bold new strategic plan that they've been developing over the last couple of years with a ton of input from community. They came to us to help work with them to basically take all that planning work, which is kind of somewhat internally focused, and translate it into an external facing message. And process for doing this involved, you know, focus groups, interviews. I think we talked to like 150 different people from wearing all kinds of different hats around Milwaukee in this process to get a sense of a deeper and richer sense of what this work means to people and to the community. And through many drafts of messaging, we landed on 5 core messages, basically, as you see here. And the topics in the left hand are similar to the 6 elements of a case for support. They're slightly different because, again, it's not a case for support. 5 top-line messages. The question we face is not how we rebuild Milwaukee, but how we build a better Milwaukee. But there's a fault line running through every system that we've built in our community, and that's racism and the legacy of racism. Greater Milwaukee Foundation is how Milwaukee works together to take on challenges like this that are too big for any one organization or any one person or community to take on. Our vision for the future is a Milwaukee for all, and a Milwaukee for all takes all of Milwaukee. So these 5 core messages, ultimately what we distilled from all these conversations, they fit on a one-pager. So we're able to go to their board and do training sessions and put this one-pager to people's hands and say, you don't need to memorize 2,000 words of like the full-length presentation. You just need to really get comfortable with these 5 messages, find the way to put them in your own words. When we talk about how messaging brings structure to substance, each one of these 5 messages has supporting information. I'm not going to go through it all, but you know, so each headline message has supporting messages and supporting facts and proof points. You can expand on and tell stories around any of the 5 messages. So you see, the vision statement of Milwaukee for All in particular, this has 3 supporting strategies: reimagine philanthropy, recenter communities, remake systems. So those are like 3 strategic pillars that support the vision. And so now that they have this core messaging, and they have, they have the really short version, they have really long versions we've written together. Now they're able to take that messaging, and they're just doing a fantastic job of taking this messaging and running with it. So they've produced a really nice strategic plan brochure where basically each spread in this brochure takes one of those core messages and expands on it. And again, it's so easy to do a nice brochure once you know what the core messages are, because the structure of it is already there. You see those 3 strategic pillars: reimagining philanthropy, recentering communities, remaking systems. Once you have those, you know what you're trying to say and how it wants to be structured. You can bring in photos, you can bring in great quotes, you can tell stories, you can show examples. Once you have the core messages that everything kind of comes off of, like hub and spokes, it's like running downhill. They've just launched a website for the strategic plan. Again, just all the same messaging, just implemented in a web format. Last Tuesday, they did this fantastic public launch event, of course, all virtual, for the new strategic plan. They had something like 800 registrations from across the community, all these different community partners coming together to see where this organization, which is such a leader in their community, where are they going? And they built the whole thing around these core messages. They had videos that, scripted, produced videos that were, expanding on some of the core messages. They had community panel discussions where different board members, leaders of community organizations in Milwaukee, I think they had something like 40 or 50 different voices featured in this event. And each of those people was speaking to these core messages in their own way. They were answering questions that kind of got at these messages. They were connecting it to their own story, their own organization, their own perspective in the community. But when you zoomed out, you'd see this comprehensive event giving you over and over again in such a resonant and cohesive way these 5 core messages in human words coming from actual people in an authentic way. And none of these people were scripted. None of them, we shared the messaging, but we did not write anybody's remarks. It was just a matter of getting the messaging to a point where people could actually take it and run with it. So again, once you start, that's just an example. We're so proud of our friends at GMF for this incredible work they've been doing. And what you find is once you get into messaging as a discipline, you kind of use it for everything. It's, having a message-driven case or campaign or strategic plan like we just shared. You can use messaging to talk about specific projects, specific presentations. What is your message for this event? When you're typing an email to your boss, what are the 2 or 3 core messages I want this message or this email to convey? Ultimately, this is a communications discipline that sinks into every aspect of your working life. All right, so that's our planned content. Let's take some time. I hope we have some questions. If we don't get to all the questions, of course, we'll follow up by email. And thank you all for taking time and for sharing any questions you might have.
Great. So we have 2 questions so far. First question is, how do you craft a message that helps overcome donor fatigue?
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay. Donor fatigue. So I'm going to guess there isn't a single silver bullet magic message that does this, but if you have, I think you're off to a good start, because it sounds like you have some insight into your audience. You know that you have a donor community that is fatigued. Why? So the questions have to start there. Why are they fatigued? Is it because we've been pushing threat-based urgency, act now, give now, or else kind of messaging at them too much this year? Is it because we've asked them too much and we just need to do more like, mission and stewardship based communications for a while? Is it really a lack of enthusiasm in that, like, they're giving to our annual fund on a kind of predictable level, but they're not excited enough about our new, our new initiative or our new project? So it seems like they're kind of tapped out, but we, at the same moment that we're asking them to go to a higher level. So from a messaging standpoint, I would just really want to understand where are people at? Why, and what will they need to know or to hear to engage with in order to kind of find a new spark or find a new passion for the organization? It's unlikely that the answer is you like explaining your mission to them better. It may be a matter of getting back to the core of why they care, going to a simpler, more emotional place with your messaging. It may be a matter of bringing them a new project or a new initiative that is just interesting and compelling. So I of course can't answer the question specific to the organization, but I would really encourage you to think about where the audience is, what they're missing, and what it would mean for them in human terms to kind of find a new passion for the organization. I know that can only get you, that kind of answer can only get you maybe a third of the way there, but I hope it's of some value.
Great, thank you. Our last question is, can your core message change year to year?
Oh, sure, yeah. You think about the different sort of constitutional bits of language that you have, like your mission statement, your board bylaws, your vision statement, your brand. You have these like things, these kind of like sets of ideas and language that constitute the organization in an intellectual sense. Your messaging is in there. You shouldn't be just changing it willy-nilly, but I think it's something that you probably should revisit every year. And understanding like, your mission probably shouldn't be rephrased and rearticulated every single year. Your strategic plan and like that set of language is probably on a 3 to 5 year cycle. Your vision statement you might revisit, either on, if you have a 20-year vision statement, you might leave it for 20 years. I think messaging is something to be thinking about probably every year. For your annual fund cycle, you might think about what is our like messaging refresh for this year? What messages do we want to communicate that show our relevance and connection to 2020 to 2021, the annual whatever's going on in your community and world in that year? If you're doing a multi-year campaign, 5-year campaign, typical thing, you're probably not going to want to change that messaging every year, but you probably do want to keep refining it and focusing it as you go out and you talk to donors. You might find that this message that we were really excited about doesn't really resonate, but when we talk to donors, they seem really excited about this aspect of it. So yeah, I think most organizations are probably at risk of revisiting their messaging too infrequently, or maybe just never even doing it. So I'm not like that worried about organizations like changing their messaging up too much. Most of us are underdoing it, not overdoing it. So I hope that's helpful as like a general framework. I think, an annual messaging refresh, like if every organization would do that, I would think that is like the most healthy development in our sector. I think that'd be great. Well, here we are at 12:59, at least Chicago time. I want to remind you, if you found this valuable, I hope you did, we have some more of these. Go check out the recording of the first one on our YouTube channel, and we hope you'll ride along with us for the next 3. And this is just the fundraising communications chunk of Campbell and Company webinars. My colleagues are doing all kinds of great webinars all the time. It's like every other week we've got something. and all really, really wonderful things from our team. So hope you'll join us, and also check out that article series as well. We're sharing a lot of resources there. We'd love to be able to have you in the mix for that. So any further questions you have, reach out to me by email. Hope we'll see you again, and thank you again for taking time.